guns, fast-paced action, titillating Fraulines. No, but a compelling open-world narrative served in a 2 to 3 hour time span on the legs of an unfettered movement system, most definitely. Now, I'm going to posit that A Short Hike is a game made for true, hardcore, AAA, minimum 300 APM gamers. But how? No guns, no explosions, no feet. Now, I do know that YouTubers say the darndest things.
Dude, I don't care what the age of consent is.
But A Short Hike, released in 2019 by developer Adam Grill, does truly condense an all-encompassing gaming experience into a very tiny package. You have your intro and motivation, the objective in reaching the apex of the peak, both literally but also hand in hand with our protagonist's character arc, the enemy and challenge in the mountain slope and sub-zero temperatures, a well-defined, fun to learn and developing mechanic, and finally a beautiful crescendo, succeeding in your objective and reaching the end of your character arc that, to my surprise, brought actual tears to my eyes.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
And that latter part especially is important. Not the crying over a pixelated bird with cell company issues, but the casual indie game actually defining and presenting a mechanic for once. Something for the player to learn and master, even if the point of the game is not the platforming, but rather the main narrative following our protagonist Claire overcoming the peak while exploring, encountering and helping the bite-sized yet very personable character portraits along the way. I won't be as regressive as saying that games like Gone Home, Dear Esther or Firewatch, often pejoratively referred to as walking simulators, aren't actual games, since game implies gameplay, but speaking only for myself, man, do I appreciate when games with a heavy narrative focus still present actual gameplay for the player. I loved the narrative in Thomas Was Alone, and I loved the game even more for presenting it on the foundation of a super tight puzzle platformer. I will forever glaze Bastion as one of the singular best games, let alone indie games, to ever be made. Not just because of the silky smooth narration, not just because of the standalone worthy soundtrack and heartfelt story, but because all of that was centered around a rock solid, easy to learn, tough to master, fast paced attack dodge gameplay. And A Short Hike is only made so much better for its inclusion of the platforming, not just to activate your Fortnite frizzled brain neurons, but because it also matters in a meta-narrative sense. From humble, landlocked beginnings at the base of the mountain, meek and unsure, to soaring high above the clouds, liberated and unchained from the worries that kept you just as confined to the ground as your tiny, unupgraded chicken wings. This is not just the literal interpretation of what is happening on your 57-inch, 240Hz quantum mini LED curved screen, but also a reflection of our protagonist's character arc, her emotions and yours as well, if you allow yourself to become immersed in this heartwarmingly emotional game. I am mostly uninterested in graphics and textures, unless of course they come with certain assets.
Choose an undead.
And you may have noticed the rather blocky pixel textures of the background gameplay. If this is a deal breaker for you, just know that you can adjust the pixelation of the game from strong and virile all the way down to non-existent and smooth, much like your brain. I will keep the pixels blocky and eye-piercing as God intended, for was it not Leviticus 19:19 that said,
"Heed my decrees. Do not mate different kinds of animals. Do not plant your field with 2 pints of nuts. Do not wear clothing woven of 2 pints of material."
And with pixels as big and crunchy like these, how indeed could even God tell the difference? Now, I am getting off track, and with the rising threat of sounding like your English teacher tirelessly scouring the pixelated color scheme to breathlessly theorize on why the water represents meets our protagonist's absent father, and this video subsequently turning into a certified longman experience, let's get cooking.
I don't give a fuck what you like.
As far as gameplay goes, the gameplay is simple and develops throughout the short game. You jump, you climb, and you glide. Jumping, climbing, and sprinting consumes feathers. Diving while in mid-air builds speed, and gliding is completely cost-free, but you slowly lose altitude. You acquire more and more feathers, thereby developing multi-jump, easier gliding and climbing, which in turn unlocks progress towards the peak of the mountain. The peak of the mountain is cold, blocking your passive feather regeneration, and if you want to avoid becoming a frozen landmark on Hawk Peak, I suggest dipping your toes in the mountainous hot springs or putting up your feet at friendly bonfires. I suppose it does bear mentioning that you can't actually lose in a short hike. At worst, your progress is impeded by lack of feathers or lack of skill, but there is no game over scenario.
Fucking dog shit.
I know. I promised something for us hardcore gamers, but don't let the lines of casual and hardcore divide us. This is a worthy game. Not a worthy indie game, but a worthy game, period. Your challenge arises in the limited stamina feather system and the managing and timing based economy of that. It takes skill, it takes exploration, and it takes time, albeit on a much smaller scale than other games. Boom. That's it. I get it. It's not Clausewitz levels of depth, but often simple is better, and in a game as short as this, the gameplay succeeds and even excels in being both a foundation for the storyline, but also intrinsically tied to character development. Take it from someone who enjoys some masochism, some difficulty scaling, in fact, even some brain trauma from his video games. A short hike does enough with its scaling mechanics, ignoring its cruciality of the character arc, to just be fun on its own. I have some hours in the game, and quite frankly, if you put your nose to the grindstone, you could probably play through the entirety of the game in half an hour or so, but I found that just gliding around and exploring, talking with the NPCs, discovering new quests, even after I completed the game, to be delightful. And this is, yet again, why having gameplay, even in your narrative-driven games, is so important. Not just for the benefit of ticking off a box that technically makes you an interactive medium, or even for the arc of the protagonists, but also to facilitate fun exploration in the game world. That game world, of course, being the entire point. Without the gameplay, presenting all the side quests and NPCs in the game would just not work. This is why a short hike is one of my favorite games ever. As unhinged as it sounds to compare this with absolutely Kino games like Dark Souls 3, Dragon Age Origins, or Hearts of Iron 4. Oh god, no. I will bang the drums endlessly for this game. Different lanes and all of that, and yes, it is unfair to directly compare single or small developer studio games with something like Baldur's Gate 3 from a comparatively massive studio, even if they aren't technically AAA, but a short hike does everything you want in your hardcore gaming experience. Core mechanics, clear progression, exploration with rewards in upgrades, branching ways of progression and collectibles. What more could you possibly ask for? Enough for your pleasure, and to soap your rotted brain with something wholesome, allow me to present a few of my favorite moments outside of the stellar ending, which should remain unspoiled. Trading Frog Boy a toy shovel found while exploring for his real Fiskars long-handled heavy-duty steel shovel, which in turn allows him to construct a veritable kingdom of sandcastles, growing larger every time you visit him. Exploration has rewarded you with further opportunities in your shovel, as well as some enjoyable background world building. Meeting the hiker almost at the height of the mountain and returning after completing the game to lend him some of your feathers, with an annual percentage rate of just above 36%, of course, allowing him to finally reach the top of the peak and indulge in a quick so-me session. And finally, gliding with the updraft through the pixelated northern lights from the very top of the mountain to wherever you land, your character arc completed and the game nearing its end. The evolving gameplay, simplistic and basic as it is, allows the game world to open, allows for organic reasons to revisit areas in the beginning, and allows the player to do so in a fun way by gliding effortlessly through the air. Almost, that is. If the peak is the main obstacle, the metaphorical antagonist, then the camera is that annoying goon that occasionally irritates you. You are going to have to contend with the camera a couple of times, but you know, it's nothing major. I don't mean to gaslight you into thinking that I am recommending the game solely based on the strength of its gameplay. No, the strength is in the wide array of personal snippets you encounter as you explore towards the peak. They are humorous, they are uplifting, and exploring the island makes you no enemies and nothing but friends. Ish. The game is short, the game is cheap, the game will run on any PC. Give yourself a break from chasing MMR or setting new high scores on your heart rate while gaming. Have yourself a hot cup of whatever is culturally appropriate and let the warm atmosphere of a short hike engulf you in joy and happiness. Alright, that was the video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Support links down in the description. This last part is a relatively unedited yap session, so if you were just here for the stale memes, thanks for now, and check out some of my other videos. A Short Hike is probably my favorite short indie game ever. I rate Bastion, RimWorld, and Stardew Valley at the very top of the indie list, but A Short Hike really is about as great a 2-hour experience as any you could have. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Scrub your brain, Gooner. Outside of the occasional weird camera angles, the controls are super tight and there is a wealth of different NPCs to speak with. Remember to glide away from the island and check out some of the surrounding smaller islands. I think every single one of them has a special encounter, NPC or mini quest line. Especially look for the mini island with the motorboat on it, and definitely save up to 100 coins to do that quest, cause it's really fun and you'll get a golden feather out of it as well, so win-win on all accounts. If you need easy coins, speak with the old guy with the fishing rod by the lake with the fish graphics in it. It's like 100 coins in a couple of minutes or so. You can sell your fish to Donald Duck by the large barge. Just be aware that he doesn't buy duplicate fish, so don't waste too much time either. The minimum amount of golden feathers needed to summit are 7, which is very, very easy to get, but definitely set aside like 2 hours, an hour and a half at least, to explore the island and the NPCs. And the more feathers you have, the easier it is to move around the island, and more fun. You can just spam jump directly into the air and use dive to gain quick speed, so don't go for bare minimum. I also think that the more time you spend on side quests and exploration, the more impactful the ending is. The game's title is pretty much tongue-in-cheek. The hike, humorously enough, ends up being much longer than expected and is basically about everything else except hiking. Anyway, as a last note, I wanted to quickly say that the soundtrack of the game made by Mark Sparling is awesome. And especially the last song, as you saw from the top of the summit, is peak indie as hell. I am in principle an audio library slave all the way, but just know that in this very tiny, very cheap video game, there is also a very nice soundtrack. Alright, that's all. Super simple game, short but filled with personality. Patreon link and other support methods in the description. Like, subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.